People whispered his name the way others whispered prayers. Not because they loved him but because fear had trained them well. In Madrid's darker corridors of power, he was known as a man who never needed to raise his voice. His decisions arrived quietly and lives changed loudly afterward. To the world he was control incarnate. To himself he was something far emptier. I did not know his name the first time I saw him. I only noticed the way the room shifted when he entered, as if air itself stepped aside. He wore no visible arrogance, no exaggerated display of wealth. Just tailored darkness, stillness, and eyes that had long stopped asking for permission. Men like that don't look for approval. They assume it. I was finishing my shift when they brought him in. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones after too many nights without rest. A senior doctor walked ahead, tense, careful with every word. Two men followed behind the patient, not in uniform but unmistakably guarding something dangerous. Or someone. Vitals stable, the doctor murmured, more to himself than anyone else. I stepped forward automatically. I'll take him. The doctor hesitated. Are you sure? I nodded. I had taken care of soldiers, addicts, men with blood on their hands and men with nothing left at all. Fear had never helped a patient heal. Calm often did. When I met his eyes for the first time I expected something sharp. Something cruel. What I saw instead surprised me. Boredom. Not arrogance. Not hunger. Just the distant boredom of a man who had already conquered everything that once excited him. You're the nurse, he said, voice low, accented, controlled. Yes, I replied, adjusting the monitor. And you're injured. A corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I've been worse. I didn't respond. I focused on my work, checking the bandage beneath his expensive shirt, noting the tension in his muscles, the way his body resisted rest even when it needed it. Silence stretched between us, thick but not uncomfortable. Most men like him expected reactions. Fear, curiosity, desire. I offered none. You're not afraid, he observed. No, I said simply. That earned his full attention. Something shifted then, subtle but undeniable. Power often feeds on response. Denial starves it. As I worked, I became aware of his scrutiny. Not the crude appraisal I was used to, but something quieter, almost analytical. Like he was trying to understand why the usual rules weren't applying. You should be, he said at last. Of pain? I asked. Or of you? Boss. Of me. I met his gaze calmly. Fear interferes with care. For the first time his composure cracked. Not visibly, not in any way that would alarm his men, but I felt it. A ripple beneath the surface. As if something inside him had been challenged, not violently but truthfully. He said nothing more. When I finished I stepped back. You'll need rest. And you'll follow the instructions whether you like them or not. One of his men bristled. He lifted a hand slightly, stopping him without looking. I will, he said. I nodded, already turning away. Wait, he called. I paused, glancing back. Yes. What's your name? There was the first request. I considered him for a moment. Amara. He repeated it quietly as if testing the sound. Amara. I left without asking his. That night, long after my shift ended, his presence lingered. Not because he frightened me, but because he unsettled something I had learned to keep steady. Men with power usually came with noise. He came with absence. An absence that felt deliberate, cultivated, and deeply lonely. He returned 2 days later. This time the visit was scheduled. Private. Efficient. The doctor assigned me again without explanation. I didn't ask for one. He looked healthier, sharper. Still bored. You again, he said. Still injured, I replied. That almost smile returned, faint but genuine this time. You speak to me like I'm ordinary. You are, I said, adjusting the four. In here. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful. If you're listening to this and wondering whether power can truly isolate someone, whether dominance can replace connection, I'd be curious to know what you think. Not all cages are visible. He watched me work, and for the first time I sensed something else beneath his composure. Not desire. Not control. Curiosity. Men feared him. Women wanted him. I offered neither. And that, I would soon learn, was far more dangerous than either. When he left that day, his men spoke in low tones behind him. He didn't hear them. Or perhaps he did and simply didn't care. As he passed me, he stopped briefly, close enough that I could feel the quiet authority he carried like a second skin. "You didn't ask my name," he said. "I didn't need it," I replied. His eyes searched mine as if looking for something he couldn't quite define. "It's Mateo." I nodded once. "Get some rest, Mateo." I watched him walk away, unaware that something had already begun shifting, slowly, silently, like a fault line under pressure. I had not entered his world. He had brushed against mine. And neither of us would remain untouched. Mateo became a routine without ever asking permission to be one. He returned every few days under the justification of follow-ups, scans, and precautions. The doctors never questioned it. Men like him did not get questioned. Schedules adjusted themselves around his presence. Corridors cleared subtly, and conversations softened whenever his shadow crossed a doorway. I treated him the same way every time. Professionally. Calmly. Without ceremony. That difference was not lost on him. "You don't look surprised to see me anymore," he said during his third visit, reclining slightly as I checked his pulse. "Should I be?" I asked. "Most people are," he replied. I shrugged. "You're healing. That's normal." He watched my face closely as if searching for cracks. He never found any. What he did find was consistency, and that unsettled him far more than hostility ever could. Around him the air always felt tighter. His men stood near doors, spoke rarely, observed everything. Yet when Mateo looked at me, it was as if that entire world paused. Not because I commanded it, but because he chose to step outside it. "You don't ask questions," he noted. "I ask the ones that matter," I said. "Pain level. Low. Sleep. Poor." That earned a brief pause in my hands. "Then you're not following instructions." His gaze sharpened. "Are you scolding me?" "Yes," I said plainly. "Lack of rest slows recovery." For a moment I thought he might laugh. Instead he exhaled slowly, like a man reminded of something forgotten. "No one speaks to me like that," he said. "I'm not no one," I replied, meeting his eyes. "I'm responsible for your care." Something flickered there. Not anger. Recognition. Outside the room, whispers followed him. Inside, silence reigned. I learned quickly that Mateo was a man accustomed to taking space. When he sat, people leaned away. When he spoke, others waited. But with me he adjusted, shifted, as if instinctively recalibrating himself to fit into a world that did not revolve around him. "Why nursing?" he asked one afternoon. I didn't look up. "Because it matters." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." He accepted that with a nod, studying the ceiling. "You don't care who I am." "I care who you are here," I said. "A patient." Another quiet stretch. "I could make this hospital very generous," he said casually. "New equipment. Funding." "I know." "And you're not interested?" I finally met his gaze. Care shouldn't come with debts. That was the moment I felt it. The shift. A subtle tightening of his jaw, the faint narrowing of his eyes. Not offended. "Everyone has a price," he said. "Everyone has a boundary," I corrected. The words settled between us, heavy and immovable. Outside these walls, his name opened doors and ended lives. Inside it meant nothing. And that reality pressed against him, testing the armor he had spent years perfecting. By the fourth visit I noticed changes. He listened more. Spoke less. Watched people when they didn't know they were being watched. His men noticed too. They exchanged looks when he dismissed them early, when he chose to walk instead of being driven, when he waited rather than commanded. "You're different lately," one of them muttered once, unaware I could hear. Mateo said nothing. One evening as I prepared his discharge papers, he broke the silence himself. "You don't flinch," he said. "At what?" "At the things people say about me. I don't listen to rumors." "They're not rumors." I set the clipboard down. "Then they're not my concern." His eyes held mine longer than usual. "You think that makes you safe?" "I think fear makes people careless," I replied. That answer stayed with him. I could see it in the way he sat back, in the way his fingers stilled. Men like Mateo survived by control. Of environments, people, outcomes. I represented something uncontrollable. Not because I resisted him, but because I refused to orbit him. It was dangerous, that refusal. I knew it. I had grown up understanding power from the outside, from the way it crushed and corrupted. I had learned early that dignity was not loud. It was stubborn. Amara, he said quietly, using my name with careful intention. You should be careful. About what? About standing too close to men like me. I studied his face, searching for threat. I found none. Only warning. Genuine, unpolished. I've been careful my whole life, I said. That doesn't mean I run. Something in him softened then. Not visibly, but enough that I felt it. If this story is pulling you in, if you feel that slow tension building, the kind that doesn't shout but tightens, take a moment to let it settle. Sometimes the quiet parts are where everything begins to change. The next week, an unmarked car waited for me after my shift. 2 men stepped out. Polite. Well-dressed. Dangerous in the way they didn't try to be. Miss Amara, one said. Mr. Mateo would like a word. I'm off duty, I replied. He anticipated that, the man said smoothly. This won't take long. I hesitated. Not because I was afraid, but because I understood what acceptance meant. When I arrived, Mateo was standing by the window, city lights stretching endlessly behind him. No guards inside. No weapons in sight. You didn't have to come, he said. I know, I replied. He turned to face me. Then why did you? Because curiosity once awakened doesn't belong to just one person. Because somewhere between antiseptic halls and quiet conversations, something had shifted. Because, I said carefully, you asked without demanding. That was the first time I saw him smile without calculation. And the first time I realized that whatever this was becoming, it would not remain harmless. The first sign that things had changed was not Mateo. It was the silence around me. I noticed it in the way conversations paused when I entered a room. In the way security guards lingered a second too long near the nurse's station. In the way my name appeared on schedules I hadn't requested, shifts aligning with a precision that felt intentional. Power I was learning didn't announce itself. It observed. Mateo did not return to the hospital that week. Instead, the city seemed to rearrange itself subtly around my routine. The cafe I visited after night shifts suddenly had the same car parked outside. The bus arrived at the exact same minute each morning. Even the streetlights on my walk home felt brighter, less forgiving of shadow. I told myself it was coincidence. I had survived worse than coincidence. Then the flowers arrived. No card. No name. Just a simple arrangement of white lilies at the nurse's desk addressed to me. The other staff buzzed immediately. Secret admirer, someone teased. I said nothing. Lilies were for funerals where I came from. For endings, not beginnings. That evening my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. You walk home too late. Take the car tonight. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Oh, I typed back. That won't be necessary. The reply came instantly. It wasn't a suggestion. I stopped typing. Not out of fear but irritation. The line had been crossed. Not violently, not loudly, but deliberately. When I exited the hospital, the car was waiting. Engine running. Door open. Mateo was not inside. I stood there for a long moment, the cool air pressing against my skin. Accepting would be easy. Refusing would be harder. But I had learned long ago that ease often came with invisible chains. I turned and walked past it. The next morning, Mateo appeared without warning. Not at the hospital. At the cafe near my apartment. He sat across from me uninvited, espresso untouched, eyes steady. You didn't take the car, he said. No, I replied. You could have been hurt. I wasn't. That's not the point. I met his gaze. Then what is? He leaned back slightly, studying me as if recalibrating his approach. You don't understand the attention you've attracted. I didn't ask for it. No, he agreed. You didn't. That admission surprised me. You don't get to decide how people protect what matters to them, he continued. And you don't get to decide what matters to me, I said quietly. The cafe hummed around us, unaware of the invisible standoff unfolding between sips of coffee and clinking cups. His jaw tightened. You're being watched. So are you, I replied. That earned a slow exhale. Not like this. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw something unguarded in his expression. Concern. Not possessive. Not strategic. Human. I don't want you caught in my gravity, he said. Then stop pulling, I answered. Silence settled between us, thick with unspoken truths. Matteo had built his life on dominance, on shaping outcomes before others even realized choices existed. I was not an outcome. I was a variable. And variables made men like him uneasy. I can't, he said finally. At least he was honest. That honesty changed everything. From that day on, his presence was no longer accidental. He didn't hover, didn't intrude, but I felt him in the margins. Decisions around me were being made by forces I hadn't invited. Opportunities appeared. Threats vanished before I even noticed them. Power was watching. Not to own me, to understand me. And understanding, in a world like his, was often the first step toward control. One night as I locked up the ward, an older nurse pulled me aside. Be careful, she whispered. Men like him don't circle unless they intend to land. I'm not a destination, I said. She smiled sadly. No one ever thinks they are. The tension followed me home, into sleep, into moments that should have been ordinary. I dreamed of cages made of gold, of hands that offered safety at the cost of freedom. I woke with my heart racing, unsure whether the danger lay outside or within. Matteo called 2 days later. I need your help, he said. With what? With someone who doesn't trust me, he replied. Someone who trusts you. I closed my eyes. That's not how trust works. No, he agreed. But it's how wars are avoided. Against my better judgment, I listened. He told me about fractures forming beneath his empire. About men who smiled while planning betrayal. About how proximity to me had shifted the way others perceived him. Less ruthless, less predictable. You've made me a liability, he said, not accusing. I didn't mean to. I know. That was the problem. If this story is making your chest tighten, if you feel that uneasy pull between safety and danger, that quiet emotional pressure, take a second and stay with it. Sometimes a simple sign of connection helps stories like this reach the people who feel them most. The line between protection and possession was thinning. I could feel it. Matteo stood on one side, his world pressing in, watching, calculating. I stood on the other, refusing to be folded into it. You should walk away, he said softly. Will you let me? I asked. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. When we hung up, I understood something clearly for the first time. This was no longer about curiosity, or attraction, or even choice. Power had noticed me. And power, once attentive, rarely looks away without consequence. I stared out at the city lights, knowing that whatever came next would demand more than calm professionalism or quiet dignity. It would demand decisions that could not be undone. And Matteo, whether he wanted to or not, would be forced to choose between the man he had been and the man he was becoming. So would I. The first rule Matteo broke was distance. He did it quietly, almost kindly. Extra security appeared near my building. Not obvious guards, but men who blended into normal life too well. The cafe owner greeted me by name now. My bus driver waited an extra minute when I ran late. Doors opened faster. Problems dissolved before I voiced them. Protection wrapped in convenience. I told myself it wasn't about me. That his world simply moved this way, adjusting around whatever caught its attention. But attention has weight. And I felt it pressing closer each day. You're safer, Matteo said when I confronted him. We were standing in a private clinic office this time, far from public ears. The lights were low, the city distant through tinted glass. I didn't ask to be, I replied. You didn't have to, he said. Danger doesn't wait for permission. I crossed my arms. Neither does control. His eyes darkened, not with anger but restraint. You think I'm trying to cage you. I think you're forgetting where the bars start, I said. He turned away, jaw tight. You don't understand what's circling. Then explain it without deciding for me, I said. That stopped him. For a moment I thought he might refuse. That he would default to authority, to silence. Instead he exhaled slowly, like a man laying down armor piece by piece. There are people watching you because you matter to me, he said. They want leverage. I am not leverage, I said sharply. To them you are, he replied. To me you're a liability I don't want to lose. The word hung there. Lose. Not use. Not own. Lose. I softened despite myself. Then loosen your grip. I can't, he said again. There was the truth he kept circling. Power had taught Matteo that safety came from control. From closing exits. From locking things down before they escaped. I had spent my life surviving the opposite. The next incident made things undeniable. I was finishing a late shift when two men approached me in the parking garage. They didn't touch me. Didn't threaten. They smiled too easily. "You're important," one said. "That makes you interesting." Before I could respond, three of Mateo's men emerged from the shadows. Efficient. Silent. The strangers disappeared as quickly as they had come. My heart hammered, not from fear but fury. Mateo arrived minutes later. "I told you," he said, scanning me for injuries. "I told you to stop," I snapped. His voice dropped. "They were testing. And now?" I demanded. "Now they know I'm watching," he said. I laughed, sharp and humorless. "No. Now they know I belong to you." That landed harder than any accusation. "I won't have you marked," I said. "Not by them. Not by you." "You think I want this?" he shot back. "You think I enjoy narrowing your world? Then widen it," I said. "Or I walk." Silence crashed between us. Walking away was the one thing Mateo could not intercept. Not without crossing a line even he respected. "You'd be safer with me," he said quietly. "I'd be free without you," I answered. His gaze searched my face, desperate and conflicted. "Those two things don't have to be enemies." "In your world they are," I said. That night I went home alone. No car. No escort. I walked fast, aware of every sound, every shadow. Fear whispered, but dignity shouted louder. The next day Mateo pulled back. Not completely, but enough that the city breathed again. The car vanished. The guards dispersed. My routine returned to something resembling normal. But cages don't disappear when doors open. They linger in memory. We didn't speak for days. When we did, it was because I went to him. His penthouse was exactly what I expected. Expensive, controlled, empty. Power without warmth. He stood by the window when I arrived, hands clasped behind his back. "I didn't come to thank you," I said. "I didn't expect you to," he replied. "I came to tell you something," I said. "Protection without consent is still a prison." He nodded slowly. "And freedom without awareness can be a grave." "I accept risk," I said. "I don't accept ownership." He turned to face me fully. "And if I accept neither? Then this ends," I said. "Now." The word end echoed through the room. Mateo had ended wars. Businesses. Bloodlines. But this he could not command. He stepped closer, stopping a careful distance away. "You're changing me." "I'm reminding you," I corrected, "of who you might have been." His eyes burned with something dangerous and tender. "If I let go, they will come closer." "Then choose," I said, "what kind of power you want to wield." For a long moment neither of us spoke. "If you're feeling torn here, between the safety of being held and the terror of being owned, let that feeling sit. Stories like this live in that tension." Mateo finally spoke. "I will not cage you." "Say it with action," I replied. "I will," he said. "But know this, if you stay near me, danger doesn't vanish. It only learns patience." "I know," I said. "So do I." When I left, the city felt larger again. Less protected. More honest. But something else had changed too. Mateo had loosened his grip. And in his world, that was the most dangerous move of all. The first thing Mateo removed was not a guard. It was a habit. He stopped anticipating my movements. Stopped arranging the world a step ahead of me. The city did not suddenly become safe, but it became honest again. Edges visible, risks unpolished. I felt the difference immediately, like a weight lifted from my shoulders and placed squarely back where it belonged. On both of us. We began meeting in neutral places. Not hospitals. Not penthouses. Ordinary cafes, quiet parks, spaces where power did not echo so loudly. Mateo chose corners with exits out of instinct, but he no longer filled them with men. "You're exposed," I told him once. He nodded. "So are you." That was new. Before, exposure had been something he managed for others, never shared. It was in those quiet moments that the man behind the fear began to surface. Not the legend whispered in alleys. Not the authority that bent rooms. Just Mateo. He spoke of his childhood once, unexpectedly. Of growing up in noise and violence. Of learning early that fear was currency. That safety came not from being loved but from being untouchable. I learned how to become inevitable, he said. And forgot how to be human, I replied gently. He didn't deny it. The more he spoke, the more I understood the architecture of his emptiness. Every wall had been built for survival. Every rule enforced to prevent loss. He had not been cruel for pleasure. He had been ruthless out of necessity, until necessity hardened into identity. You see me, he said one evening, voice low. And you don't flinch. I see you, I said. And I don't confuse fear with strength. That distinction mattered more than any declaration. Danger did not disappear. If anything, it sharpened. The men circling Matteo noticed the shift. Whispers grew louder. Alliances tested boundaries. His restraint was read as weakness, his distance as distraction. You're vulnerable, one of his lieutenants warned him. Matteo replied calmly, I'm precise. They did not understand the difference. I did. Precision required clarity. And clarity demanded honesty, especially the kind that hurt. The night everything cracked open, it wasn't violence that started it. It was truth. We were walking near the river, the city lights reflecting off dark water, when Matteo stopped suddenly. If they come for you, he said, I will end them. That's not protection, I replied. That's annihilation. It's the only language they respect. And what language do you respect? I asked. He looked at me, then really looked. The mask slipped entirely. Yours, he admitted. And that terrifies me. I took a slow breath. You don't have to be fearless to be worthy. He let out a sound that was almost a laugh. Almost a break. You don't understand. If I let myself feel this, if I choose you, I lose the distance that keeps everyone alive. Or, I said quietly, you gain a reason to stop living like a weapon. The river moved beside us, relentless and patient. You're asking me to change the core of who I am, he said. No, I answered. I'm asking you to choose who you become next. The attack came 2 days later. Not directly. Not messy. A calculated strike at his infrastructure. Money frozen. Routes compromised. A message delivered without words. Matteo handled it with frightening efficiency. But when he came to me afterward, there was blood on his knuckles and something worse in his eyes. I almost lost myself, he said. I cleaned his wounds silently, hands steady, heart racing. They used you as bait, he continued. They thought I'd cage you again. And? I asked. I didn't, he said. I chose transparency. I exposed the traitor instead. That cost you, I said. Yes, he replied. But it didn't cost you. The weight of that choice settled heavily between us. You're bleeding, I murmured. So are they, he said. I met his gaze. This cannot end with blood. It already has, he replied. What matters is what follows. In that moment I understood the true risk. Not that Matteo would hurt me, but that loving him would require standing inside a storm that never fully cleared. You don't need me to be good, he said softly. You need me to be accountable. Yes, I said. And present. He nodded once. A promise without ceremony. We did not touch. We did not rush. Intimacy grew in restraint, in shared silence, in the understanding that some bonds are forged not by passion, but by choice under pressure. The man behind the fear was not gentle, not healed, but he was aware. And awareness in a world like his was revolutionary. Still, revolutions demand reckoning. Matteo's enemies were regrouping, watching, waiting for proof that his evolution was weakness. They would not wait long. Neither could we. As I left that night, he spoke from the doorway. If this ends badly, it won't end cleanly, I interrupted. That's different. He smiled then. Not like a king. Like a man who finally understood the cost of becoming human. Behind us, the city pulsed, indifferent to transformation. Ahead, consequences gathered shape. The cage was gone. The danger remained. And the man who once ruled through fear was about to face the most difficult battle of his life. Not against enemies, but against the world he had built to survive them. The end did not arrive with sirens or gunfire. It came quietly, the way real power often does. Without spectacle, without witnesses, without the need to prove itself. Matteo dismantled his empire the same way he had built it. Deliberately. Accounts closed. Routes rerouted. Men reassigned or cut loose with final warnings instead of bullets. Those who thrived on chaos found no foothold in his new order. Those who understood discipline adapted. The rest disappeared from relevance rather than life. It unsettled everyone. They expected violence. They got silence. I watched the transformation from the edge of his world, never pulled inside, never pushed away. He told me what he was doing only when it mattered. No theatrics. No pleas for approval. Accountability looked like restraint. One night he arrived at my apartment without escort, without announcement. He looked tired, not wounded, not broken, just human in a way I had never seen him before. "It's done," he said. "What is?" I asked. "The version of me that needed fear to function." I studied his face, searching for cracks. I found resolve instead. "They'll test you," I said. "They already have," he replied. Quietly. Like this. He sat at my small kitchen table, hands folded, eyes steady. No tension in his shoulders. No scanning the room. Peace I realized was unfamiliar territory for him. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I finally understand the difference between control and leadership," he said. "Control demands obedience. Leadership earns trust." "And you?" I asked softly. "What do you demand?" "Nothing," he replied. "I choose." That answer mattered more than anything else he had ever given me. The days that followed were strangely ordinary. I went to work. He handled consequences. The city kept moving. Power shifted without headlines. Fear lost its currency when no one traded in it. One afternoon I found him sitting on a bench outside the hospital watching people pass. "You don't belong here," I teased gently. He smiled. "Neither did you at first." We sat in silence, sharing the small comfort of being unremarkable. "I used to believe power meant never needing anyone," he said. "And now?" I asked. "Now I know it means knowing who you won't sacrifice," he answered. That night the final test came. A message. An offer. A threat disguised as respect. A chance to reclaim absolute dominance in exchange for one thing. Distance from me. Matteo didn't ask my opinion. He didn't need to. He declined. Not with words. With absence. The channel went dead. The offer collapsed under its own weight. When he told me later, there was no pride in his voice. "Are you afraid?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "But fear doesn't decide anymore." That was the moment I knew this was real. We did not build a fantasy. There were no promises of forever spoken aloud. No dramatic declarations. Just continuity. Truth. Consistency. The world still carried risks. So did loving him. But love, I had learned, was not the opposite of danger. It was the reason to face it without becoming it. Weeks passed. Then months. Matteo became quieter. Not weaker. Quieter. Meetings ended faster. Decisions involved fewer threats and more outcomes. His name stopped echoing in fear and began circulating in caution. Respect replaced terror. And terror, deprived of attention, starved. One evening, as we stood on my balcony watching the city lights blur into constellations, he spoke without looking at me. "If you walk away one day," he said, "I will not follow." I turned to him. "Because you don't care?" "Because I do," he replied. "Because choosing you once was power. Choosing you always must remain a choice." I nodded. That's all I ever wanted. We stood there, not touching, not distant. Balanced. Quiet power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It shows up in restraint, in listening, in the courage to release what once defined you. Matteo did not become harmless. He became intentional. And I did not become protected. I became respected. If this story stayed with you, if you felt the pull of dignity over dominance, of quiet strength over noise, then you already understand what kind of stories matter to you. Stay with those stories. Stay with the ones that believe power can change without pretending it never existed. Because sometimes the most radical thing a powerful man can do is choose to be human. And sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is refuse to be owned.